What's up guys, happy Monday, and wow, what a weekend, what a race that was in the United States. The US always puts on great sporting events, but this was a brilliant race as well. This was a spectacular F1 event, and it had pretty much everything, didn't it? It had a bit of controversy, it had the last few laps, we had the lead three cars within a couple of seconds of each other, so it was brilliant. It had a championship at stake. It had some great overtaking, it had some great battles, it had mistakes. I mean, pretty much everything we wanted from a Formula One event. If you're a Lewis Hamilton fan, you've got to wait just one more week, I would imagine, before he can finally seal that crown. But and I'm going to quickly give you one question from Ask Elvis, from the Ask Elvis library, if you like, before we even roll the sting, because I think this one sums it up, and this one came from I Am Legend, and he simply says, is anyone not happy for Kimi Raikkonen? I mean, no, they're not, are they? He's a most incredibly popular winner. On a personal level for me, I love to see him back on the top step. I think this will be one of his last, probably one of his last opportunities in his career to win a race. And I'm so pleased that he did it, in Ferrari colours before he's done. We talk about him helping Sebastian. That was probably the best help he could have given Sebastian today. It was taking the 25 points. Obviously helps the team as well. It's just a brilliant result. He's just a great character, and I'm really pleased for him. So I hope you all enjoyed the spectacle. But it has provoked loads of reaction on lots of different levels. So let's get into some of that with this week's Ask Elvis. Thank you very much again for all your questions. Roll the sting. Now, at the end of this one, as I promised last week, I will be giving away... Shush, dogs. Gave the dogs a bone each, and all they keep doing is picking it up, dropping it on the hard wooden floor, making a right racket. As I promised last week, I said I was going to give away 5 copies of my paperback version of my book before it's even out in the shops. Loads of you entered that competition by sharing that particular video online on social media, so thank you very much. So many of you did that, appreciate it. At the end of this video, I'm going to go through with my special assistants of my 2 youngest children who are on half term this week to pick the 5 winners, which I will then get those books signed to you and into the post as quickly as I can, and you'll have them very soon. So that's all of that coming at the end of the video. Stay tuned for that. But let's get into some questions, of which there are many. Okay, let's get started with this one from Max Kiva, who says, how does a driver know that his rear tyres are blistering? Are they using the mirrors? Because I was thinking they're not a lot of use in F1. They are using the mirrors, and this is referring to, presumably, to Lewis Hamilton, who was talking on the radio about how his rear tyres are blistering. The drivers actually deliberately set up their rear view mirrors. When they're sat in the car before the weekend starts, they get in, they set the pedals, they set the steering position, set the belts, all of those things. One of the other things they do, probably on a Thursday or a Friday morning, is set the mirrors in the car, the position of those mirrors, and they set them deliberately to angle down slightly just so they can see the top of the rear tyres, of their own rear tyres, for exactly that reason, because it's just one of those extra data points that a driver can use to see the condition of his own rear tyres and therefore help him manage those throughout a race stint. So yes, they do use the mirrors. Matthew Steer has this one. He says, Esteban Ocon was disqualified for fuel flow rate irregularities. What does this mean exactly, and how much of an advantage would it give him? Well, the advantage will depend on exactly how much above the fuel flow rate his car was performing at, and I don't know what that is. But there's a standard fuel flow rate that any car cannot exceed, and that means the amount of fuel being pumped through from the fuel tank into the engine at any given time cannot exceed the maximum fuel flow rate. Each car has a standard fuel flow meter or sensor on that car to tell the FIA and the teams exactly what their fuel flow rate is at any given time. If they spike over that maximum limit, it's a slam dunk, they're going to get disqualified. That's what happened here. The chances are it was a tiny, tiny amount, just over the peak limit, but rules are rules. And the teams tend to, because this is a standard part, so they have to buy it from a certain supplier, the teams tend to buy a batch of them because there are slight variations in the calibrations of each of these sensors, tiny, tiny amounts. But Formula One teams being as they are, they'll buy a whole batch. They might buy 10 or 20 of these fuel flow sensors, test them all at their own factories, and the one that allows the absolute closest fuel flow rate to the limit will be the one they'll put on the car, because another one might be a tiny amount lower than that. Of course, they want the maximum fuel flow rate they can, but it has to stay within the limit of the regulations. And just occasionally, you remember Daniel Ricciardo got penalised for the very same thing in the first race of the introduction of these fuel flow sensors, these fuel flow limits that we had back in Australia. Daniel Ricciardo finished on the podium and was then completely disqualified as a result of the same thing. So it's a difficult thing for a driver, because of course he has no control over that. And I imagine, as I say, it's a tiny little spike that's probably crept over the top. So the advantage to him is probably minuscule, if anything, but rules are rules. Fox Z, or Fox Z, Foxy, says, is there a reason why it's always Vettel's car which is spinning when colliding? It's just like in Japan, he spun while the Red Bull didn't. Lewis Dobson kind of asked the same thing. He says, why does Vettel keep spinning on seemingly gentle contact with either of the front wheels? Is it an issue with the weight distribution? No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. The weight distribution of a Formula One car is set up in a very finely balanced way to balance the car as it's going around the racetrack. It's a very strictly scientifically calculated measurement between the weight distribution front to rear. And no team would set something up so far out that it's going to suddenly make the car spin like a pendulum in an obscure way. So no, I think the issues that we've had with Vettel have simply been about where the contact has been made and at what point in a corner, at which point on the limit Sebastian is. Yesterday what happened was Sebastian was on the limit. He actually got a little bit of snap of oversteer, which was then he had to then correct with a little bit of left hand down on the steering wheel, and that's what pitched him into the contact with Ricciardo. And at that point, when a Formula One car is on its absolute limit, it's on a knife edge. If you were able to run alongside a Formula One car when it's on its limit in a corner, on the absolute limit of traction, you could give it a nudge with your finger and it would spin off into the distance. That's how finely balanced they are. That's the quickest way around a racetrack. So I think Sebastian has just been a bit unlucky, and I don't think it's anything more than that. David Piles asks this one, which is a good one, because actually you see this quite a lot on the television, and I guess a number of people probably wonder why it is. He says, why do all the mechanics wear neon coloured shirts after the Grand Prix? Is it a safety issue regarding visibility or some other reason? It is a safety issue. It's a health and safety issue. So the teams all have to get changed, and the rule is you have to wear a high visibility clothing during the pack-up phase of a Grand Prix, because there are forklifts running around everywhere, there are trucks, there are vehicles running all over the place, equipment being moved all around the pit lane and the paddock, and quite often the light is beginning to disappear at that point as well. So yes, they have to wear high visibility shirts instead of just buying those bright yellow kind of overcoats that you see builders wearing. Of course, Formula One teams, being Formula One teams, produce their own branded high-vis versions of their own uniform. So after the race, once the celebrations or commiserations are over, they will all change their shirts into these neon tops, high-vis tops, and that is what they will wear for the pack-up. But it is a health and safety reason. Right, this is a question that lots of people have asked me over the years, I guess. And this one, I'll pick this one because it comes from Speed World, and he says, why do we have Parc ferme conditions where teams can't change anything but the tyre pressures and wing angles? Why not let them change whatever they want during qualifying? So Parc ferme kicks in at the beginning of qualifying. So as soon as the cars go out for qualifying, They are highly restricted on what they can change. As you say there, limited more or less to tyre pressures and front wing angles between there and of course the race. The reason they do it is because back in the day, even back when I was working at McLaren, there were no Parc ferme restrictions in the beginning, and teams almost had a completely separate car for the race. So they would build a car for qualifying. They would then change pretty much everything, you know, engines, gearbox, take all the sensors out of the car for qualifying, put them back in for the race. They would have, you know, race and qualifying specific elements to the car. And of course, the upshot of all of that is that the costs go through the roof, because you're having to design and manufacture bespoke parts for different elements of the weekend. And that's the reason. It was a cost-cutting exercise. And I think it makes sense. You know, if you're putting in something different for qualifying in the race, it's not normally something that the viewer, the fan, can see and can recognise and can appreciate. And the difference it makes, of course, is tiny. Formula One teams will always go for any difference, but we're trying to look at what the viewer can appreciate. Well, if we're going to spend a load of money on Formula One cars and Formula One teams, a little bit like what I was saying the other day in terms of aerodynamics, and you know, should we be spending millions and hundreds of millions on aerodynamics, that little tweaks and flick ups and flaps that fans probably can't see, most of them can't tell the difference between, you know, and when you look at two cars running around on TV screens, they pretty much look the same, you know, apart from the different colour schemes. So should we be spending all of that money on something that actually makes very little difference to a Formula One fan? And that's the reason. It's about cost cutting and about spending money in the right areas in Formula One. Phil Kitchen asks this one, and I kind of thought about this question at the time as well. He says, can you explain why Seb and Carlos Sainz both took the same off-track line in the first corner, right behind each other, but only Sainz got the 5-second penalty? To be honest, no, I can't really. It struck me as being slightly strange. I thought the penalty was actually a bit harsh on Sainz anyway, given it was the first lap of the race, and there was Get off. First lap of the race, and there was an incident going on, wasn't there, with the McLaren and the Sauber. So, the Williams. So there was, you know, good reason, I would say, mitigating circumstances for Sainz to disappear off track, and Sebastian Vettel. Stay down, good boy. So I thought it was a harsh decision, and no, I can't explain why they gave a penalty to Carlos Sainz and not to Seb, because he did do a very similar thing, and there were others as well. You know, Max Verstappen went left, whereas the others went around the outside. So, difficult one. Normally they tend to let those things go on the first lap. So I thought it was a little bit strange, and I felt a little bit. I felt like Sainz was a bit hard done by. Paul says, do you think that the 2019 Aero changes will help move strategies away from the rigid one-stop? It seemed as if Hamilton's VSC-assisted two-stop strategy could have worked out if he was able to overtake. I prefer split strategies rather than these murmurs of forced two-stop strategies. Okay, well, the 2019 Aero changes, part of those are designed to promote overtaking, isn't it? It's to promote cars being able to follow each other. And you're right, that was one of the reasons Lewis Hamilton struggled so much, because he was following cars, he couldn't get close enough to overtake. So if the 2019 regs do indeed give a dramatic improvement in that ability to follow and therefore to overtake, yes, it will influence some strategy decisions, because at the moment a one-stop strategy, or one of the reasons a one-stop strategy is preferred, is because if you're in a two-stop strategy, one of the consequences of that is that you do have to get past cars. When you make your second stop, you drop further back into the field, you have to find a way past. And if generally that's a harder thing to do, you're less likely to go for a two-stop over a one-stop. So it depends on the effectiveness of the 2019 changes, and we won't really know those yet until we get lots of cars on track together. But there are still lots of other reasons why a one-stop strategy is preferred. Some circuits have a longer pit lane loss time, for example, a longer pit lane entry or exit, slower pit lane speed limits, which means that the overall time taken for a pit stop. Dogs sound like Chewbacca down here behind me. The overall time taken for a pit stop can be a lot longer at some circuits than others, and that equally has a big impact on the way that teams choose their their strategy. So I don't think it's going to completely dramatically change everything and reset everything back to what you're hoping for, which is a split set of strategies. It may go some way towards it though, but we'll only find that out once we get cars, real world cars on a real world track, trying to follow each other. Shush! Stefan78 says, do you think that Danny Rick gets B quality parts since he signed with Renault F1? It seems to be a little too much to call unlucky. Okay, so is Danny Ricciardo getting second-hand or B quality parts? No, I don't think so. Certainly not in any deliberate sense. You've got to remember that, first of all, there are no B quality parts in a Formula 1 team that make it to a racetrack. And why on earth would a team give B quality parts to one of its drivers? Because even if they had some absolute grudge to bear that Daniel Ricciardo has let them down and is leaving, he's still driving for their team. He's still trying to score points for their team, and they need the maximum they can get. So they're not going to deliberately sabotage his car or his race. The only thing that could potentially happen is if you get two parts that are produced, I can't think what they might be, two engines for example, and the power level figures for those engines, which they don't, which Red Bull don't. So Renault do, but they won't supply power figures, specific power figures of each engine to Red Bull Racing. Potentially they could give the slightly higher power version to Max Verstappen and the other one, the less good one, to Daniel Ricciardo. But, we're talking tiny amounts, and we're certainly not talking about anything that might cause reliability problems. So no is the answer to that. I cannot see any team try to sabotage any one of its own drivers for any reason, because the points still mean prizes. Okay, that's it. We're going to stop there for questions, but a very important thing to do now, and this is where I'm going to need my assistants. I'm going to go and grab them, and we are going to choose 5 winners to take one of my brand new paperback books signed to you before it's available in the shops. Wait there. Okay, got my beautiful assistants here on half term, so going to make use of them. Here it is. This is the book. You will be winning 5 copies of this, as I say, to sign and give away. I've got all of your entries, all of your retweets, all of your YouTube shares and Facebook shares and all of the social media shares on my page in front of me. I'm going to scroll down them. You guys are going to shout stop one at a time, and we're going to pick 5. So let's get on with it. Right, Rex, are you going to pick the first one?
Yeah.
Okay, right, ready, here we go. And hang on, let me start there. Right, tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay, Leighton Brown, you have just won a book. I will message you privately to get your details, but well done to you. First one. Right, Ginger, hold on. Right, Ginger, say stop when you're ready.
Stop.
There we go. P&N Kramer, well done to you as well. I will give you a message, drop you a message, a DM to get your details. Congratulations. That's 2. Right, Rex, ready?
Yep.
Say stop whenever.
Stop.
Okay. Jason McLaren Sultana. Congratulations to you. Thank you very much. You have just won a book. Ginger.
Stop.
Cabby 007, you have also just won a book. Well done to you. Right, one more. I better pick this one, otherwise it's not fair, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, this one's going to be on me. Stop. That is... which one of those do you think is nearest?
Wait. I think it's the one the mouse is on.
That one.
Mechanic.
That is Mécanique. Well done to you. Right, well, thank you very much. Well done, guys. Thanks for your help. Thank you very much to everybody who entered. I will message you all privately for the 5 winners of those books, but congratulations. If you haven't read it yet, I hope you enjoy it. If you didn't win, well, go and buy it. It's on Amazon. I'll pop the link in the description at the end of this video for those who would just like to buy a copy. Thank you for all your questions. Thanks for all the entries. Have a great day, and I will speak to you tomorrow.